Hey, this is a video I wanted to add. Looking at everyone's images from the outdoor, I realized kind of missed an opportunity, and I wanted to add a little bit more to this week. And some of you might miss this, but for some of you that have noise issues or focal issues, this is something I should have talked about. So next time I do this class, this is definitely a big part of this week. So I just brought the cone in, and I'm going to move it over and yeah, and move this over to this image here. So this is the focus image from the Canon. Just going to do a quick transform, drop that down about there, and maybe a little bit bigger. So it's kind of in front, okay? Return, accept that. So the issue is that it's too focused, right? It doesn't look like it's in front because we see these pencils and this marble, and we know, well, wait, that should be out of focus. So what should be in focus is the plane. Um, so what do I do? Well, I need to use a filter. So I talked about the liquify, which maybe wasn't the best time to bring that in. I don't know. That was a silly decision in a way, but so I'm going to add a filter to this, and what I'm going to do when I do that is I'm going to go to filter, and the thing I want to point out here is this convert for smart filters, and this is a really, really good idea to do when you're doing filters, because then what it allows you to do is come back in to a filter and work with a filter. So you don't have to, usually if you use a filter, it does it once and then it's gone, and you can't edit the filter. If you convert for a smart filter, you can come back and work with that filter as much as you want and just keep coming back and tweaking with it a little. So it's really useful. The other thing smart filters does is it creates masking for your filters as well, so you can mask out where the filter is actually working. It's really super useful. I don't even think that it should just happen automatically, quite honestly, but whatever. I'm going to click convert for smart filter, and I'm doing that on the cone. Okay, so it says this, and you get this little icon on the bottom. It looks like that. Okay, so nothing actually happened. A filter didn't happen. It just prepared the layer for smart filter. So now if I go to filter, the first one I'm going to show you two. I'm going to show you blur, and then I'm going to show you noise, because these are the two things that are happening, right? So the most common blur tool you're going to see is Gaussian blur. Okay. These others kind of work for different reasons. These are motion ones. If you have motion, you might want to be interested in that. But uh, actually, that skin, I was talking about skin in that other video about liquify. This is average. This is how you get average skin tone, is you just blur the heck out of a image. You can do it with Gaussian blur too, actually. So you can see already the blur is showing, it's at 1.3 radius, and I can see the blur happening, and I can just play with this little slider. It's pretty blurry, right? I mean, it should be even more blurry because it's even than those pencils, because um, it's in front of the pencils, right? Um, and that's it. I could just say okay. It's pretty easy. Now you can see that there's the smart filter here. So if I wanted to go back and edit that, I can just double click on Gaussian blur. Say okay, and then I can double click on Gaussian blur and edit it. And that's kind of the beauty, is that you can just keep coming back and edit that blurriness, right? It looks maybe, I think actually a little bit more. Okay, I'll say that. Don't want to get too into this. And then obviously maybe a little bit of an adjustment. Kind of feels a little bit too light. I'll make that happen there. those highlights down just a bit. Done. Okay, so that's blur, and so some of you have some situations where you're going to need to blur your objects to make it feel like it's in space. Okay, so notice that you do have the for those of you that are, it makes sense. You may need to use the filter, right? The filter's mask. So if it does make sense, go ahead and just grab your mask and paint out where you don't want the filter, or remember, you can paint it back in. You can go to gray. You don't have to do. If I do black and I do a half, it can just have some tips show. So you can have parts of it come in and parts of it come out, right, in focus. So if that's something that makes sense to you, go ahead and do that. Let me show you the other one. This is the last one. This would be the noise. So some of you also shot at night, right? So I'm going to take this image again and just put it in here. Drop it here. Get smaller. Just put it in the edge here. Okay. Same thing. I'm going to just make a filter. I'm going to do convert for smart filter. I'm going to say OK. Let's get a little closer. So this one here is going to be noise. Add noise. Did that kind of fast. Let me show that. Filter, noise, add noise. And of course you can see there's some of these others, but really this is going to be the more common. So the most common are going to be Gaussian and add noise. Right now it's set to monochromatic. If you check that, you get color. And in this case, I kind of feel like if you get really close in there, that in my opinion, color doesn't work as well, right? Do you see that? Like, in my opinion, monochromatic is more what's going on. By the way, some of you, I mentioned this and then didn't say it, but that's the edge of my mask. Do you guys see that? And so I've talked about this for some of you, but just notice when you do these masks, they don't always go away, right? The mask doesn't always disappear on the edge, and so that's the edge of the mask. That's right, the very last edge of the selection. So I probably need to go in and clean that up, right? But just notice that, because I've been meaning to point that out to other people, and I've seen this for everyone. Not everyone, but a couple. Sometimes they show up, and usually it's when I zoom in, I see it. And it happens to me too, and you do need to clean these up. So since I was close, I wanted to point that out. So it's pretty noisy image. I think I'm gonna stick there. So 9.5 is pretty high. If you play with uniform, you'll see that or Gaussian, sometimes with Gaussian a little bit of a lower number, maybe more. Let's try a 6. Maybe 6 is a little bit better. I'll say okay. You got to play around with them. And then, like before, if you want it, like, 6, I think better 7, right? You can just go back in there and you can just keep messing with that as much as you want. Now, in my opinion, it's also a little bit, it needs a little bit of blur, so I'll do some Gaussian blur. Not quite so blurry, maybe around there. Looks pretty okay. Maybe a little less. Now that That kind of takes some of the noise out. So let's go back to that noise. And let's go back up. Let's go to 9. See if the order changes anything. Let me try that before, but getting a little closer. Let's crank that a little bit higher. Let's just let's try to delete. Oh, don't want to delete. Let's try doing. Let's do this, and let's do this in the opposite order. Let's go backwards. Let's go filter. Let's go blur. Now let's do noise. Yeah, the order's better. Let's do actually 5, 6. Yeah. So I think what you're seeing there is that the order actually is did that last time on the practice one. I did them backwards. So the order does make a difference, right? So I did the blur first and then the noise. So the blur on top of the noise change that order. Let me try and move that. I feel like I should be able to move these above. I am. Okay, so I just didn't move it far enough. That was dumb. Okay, so you can grab this too, as you see, and then I can get the noise on top. Do you see how the difference there is? I didn't need to delete those or anything. Kind of panicked. I think that looks a little bit better. Let me come back out. And the goal is to try and get things to match, and that's sort of what we're doing there. And so those are two things that you're going to want to be able to add into this image that are going to really help, right? The overall darkness there, but the I'm looking at your images. I'm seeing a lot of you have noisy images and a lot of you have focus issues. So you're going to want to be able to manage those a little bit. So I'm going to end it right here, and hopefully this makes sense to you. All right.